You are now tuned into the 2-Minute Warning, a live stream community conversation pertaining to social and political issues and how we can collectively resolve them. Powered by the Westside Gazette.
Hello and welcome to 2-Minute Warning by the Westside Gazette newspaper. I'm your host, Perry Busby. The 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette newspaper, Broward County's oldest African-American family-owned newspaper. And joining me at the desk tonight are my good brothers on the mic, Mr. Bobby Henry, the publisher of the Westside Gazette, and Mr. David Wright. How are you brothers doing tonight?
Well, you know, we are terrific and getting better.
Absolutely. Outstanding, my brother. This is the start of a fresh month.
Yes, sir.
Black History Month.
And power to the people.
Power to the people.
Power to the people.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's sometimes, Perry, where we need to have an energy boost, you know, and this is one of those times. If we are allowed, or if they gave us this month, let's take advantage of it. And let's really knock the boots off, if you will. Let's do it.
All 29 days.
All 29 days.
All 29. We got 29 this year.
Yeah, and we're gonna bring up the brother from the fourth floor. So yeah, man, this is serious. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, man, a lot has been happening. As always, life is coming at us at 3D, 4D, and multi-dimensional ways. And so, man, tell me what's going on? Been here. I know things are getting a little cold down there because things are getting cold here as well. But beside the weather getting cold, what's hot going on down there?
You know, that's a good segue. Let me just do this. Unfortunately, our sports person, Nooney on the sideline, Coach Nooney, they had a fire at their house, and he won't be able to join us tonight. So let's keep them in prayer. Fortunately, the fire didn't go inside; it stayed on the outside. So if you can imagine how traumatic that is. So he won't be joining us tonight. So I just use that since you said hot. So.
Yes, that is extremely hot. But brothers, before we go any further, do want to take a moment to give our condolences to Miss Sherry Madison and the family of Joe Madison, known nationwide as the Black Eagle. I've had many morning cups of coffee listening to Joe and even sharing some conversations with him over the years. And I think or I believe and I know that the news media industry has lost an icon and Black America has lost a pivotal voice, because Joe was uncompromised in his broadcast, and he stayed on top of the issues. And he didn't just stay on top of the issues. If you listen to Joe, you were going to learn something. And so his show was more of a classroom than listening to a talk show.
Yeah. What you gonna do about it?
Mm-hmm. And Perry, what I attribute most and what I learned most about Joe the Black Eagle was he was really a no nonsense guy. He had very little tolerance for ignorance, unintelligence, not being informed, and his mission was to inform. And like you said, so many times I was able to listen to him, and especially after he was able to get on Sirius XM and he was able to get his show out there to the masses.
Right.
He really, really inspired not only me, but other people that I know that were big followers of Joe. And I put him up there with the likes of, so many of our great in journalism. But Dick Gregory comes to mind. I put him up there with those that just were unashamed to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's about. We to tell the truth and stand on it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
I know.
and you mentioned Dick Gregory, who was a mentor and dear friend of his, and really was one of the people that got him started. But I laugh when you say his uncompromised view, because if you ever thought about calling in to his show, you better have your facts together, or he was gonna call you on it right away. And we need more of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Call you on it and cut you off.
That's
You know,
right.
we have lost truly a great soldier.
Yeah.
But he has gone on to fight in the greatest army of all time. So,
Yep. Fight remain. Okay.
Yep, it
And David, no, you had something you were telling us about.
Well, there's so much going on in the media, but part of our conversations, and for those of you, the readers of the West Side Gazette, if you were to check out the front page, you'd find out some articles dealing with some of our fallen soldiers. In this particular case, this was a regiment of reservists that were predominantly African American that got taken out, and this is beginning to happen a little more frequently. We can go back to 2018 where there was some suspicious activity going on in Nigeria as well. But I mean, here is where oftentimes we are challenged about our loyalty to this country, our patriotism. And here again, these people are our brothers and sisters have fallen in the line of duty. And again, I hats off to the family, our prayers to the family. This is a sad moment, but at the same time, I think the president has talked to the family and kind of reassured them that that they do have a plan, that justice will prevail. But again, I think as Americans, African Americans, we really need to just take a moment and salute those that have gone on.
Absolutely. Say their names, David.
Yeah, so we do have the names here of those individuals that were hit by that drone attack in Syria. And the names of those individuals are Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, 46, of Carrington, Georgia; Specialist Kennedy Landon Sanders, 24, of Rayquash, Georgia; and Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffitt, 23, of Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah, all of them from Georgia, man.
Yeah, and again, our prayers go out to them and their families.
Yeah, I was strolling on TikTok and came across the phone call that President Biden had made to Kennedy's family. It was extremely touching, man, and I think it showed the human side of tragedy and that of which Joe Biden has been showing all the time, and I'm just saying that I won't get too political, but to see the president call the family of Black fallen soldiers and offer his condolences and asking them with their permission, can he come to the place where their bodies would be returned home? That says a lot about the man. So, but like you said, David, condolences to the families, and God bless all our soldiers. Lord knows this is some trying times. So,
yeah. And I know usually, in these times, the tragedy is just overpowering. I mean, without a doubt, to lose these young people who stepped up to serve, for one, and in the line of service, gave the ultimate in their lives. But I do think that, as David says, one of the things that begins to go unsaid in these whole things. I think a few years ago, for those of us who were in South Florida a few years ago, and to see another young Black soldier get killed in Africa, at that time it raised the awareness that we were even having active missions in Africa to that extent. This gives even more. And if you consider, and again, we're not trying to go down to a rabbit hole tonight, but if you remember Prigozhin from Ukraine, the guy who was leading Russia's army, when he left Ukraine, he said he was going back to Africa to lead the troops back in Africa. And so we cannot, in this month of Black history, not forget or be unaware that they are still reaping the rich minerals from Africa, because that is what this whole occupation is about. All of the rare minerals that are behind the productivity of these new iPhones and smartphones and all of this technology. While they talking to us about AI, this is the rich minerals that fuel all of that, and so they're still reaping or raping the motherland of its rich resources, including its human resources. So let us not forget this in this process, because America is complicit in this. We are a globalist society, and so yes, the minerals here and in Afghanistan are the two richest places for cobalt. But we don't talk about that, and we're not going to go there because that's political or whatever. But we do need to discuss that in this month of Black history, how they are raping the motherland still good and fertile.
Well, Perry, I beg to differ. Some of us that have knowledge of our global community should speak out. I mean, there's conflicts going on in Sudan right now, and the U.S. is really taking a back seat when we should, in our opinion, people from the Pan-African and national movements feel like they should be more engaged because we do have vested interest in some of these countries. And we don't want to be like some politicians who want to see the communities destroyed so they can come in and take over with a low budget and buy out what's rich in minerals and resources. So again, what's our position? And at some point, we do need to speak up. We don't want to belabor this and make it political, but please don't get me started.
No. I mean, because we had that whole issue with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who said unapologetically that she was first Somali. And I think for us, sometimes as African Americans, we so far removed from our African roots that doesn't resonate with her, that she says first and foremost unapologetically, I am Somali. That doesn't stop me from loving America, but I recognize who I am. And then you have this idiot who tells her, you need to go back.
But that none of that is unexpected when we're dealing what we're dealing with. That's the onus falls back on us. What they say, my grandma used to say, you can call me anything you want, but don't call me late for dinner. But it's what you answer to. It's what you answer to, man. So if we continue to answer to what they call us, then we will forever be that. I see Miss Susan Robertson Hard. She says the American war machine. You went to that one. Okay, there it is. The American war machine is out of control.
That's the industrial complex. But as we segue from Africa, I do want to add that the proverbs of the Dogon tribe say that we are 5 generations removed and 5 generations to the future, which means we stand on the shoulders of 5 generations before us, and we are now preparing 5 generations down the road. Now I'm gonna leave it right there for another conversation.
Oh yeah, so we must have that conversation. We're gonna create that show. Find some. We'll have some, not expertise, but people who understand a little more than perhaps I do, and we can talk about that, Perry. How our continent was robbed of its precious cargo and still being robbed today of its minerals. So yeah, we are complicit. I think that was the term that you used, right. Which says a lot about who we are. Okay. Where are we now? What are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do now, dude?
Well, I think we talked about the people made some comments on the Breakfast Club. Did y'all want to touch on that, or did we?
Man, I don't want to give that lady.
I think we're gonna bypass that.
I don't want to give that lady no play.
Okay, well, how about a recap from this last week? It's been a very exciting week here in South Florida. We had some visitors come to town, and our illustrious Chair want to share something about it?
Yeah, let me do that. Let me say this. Again, I'll try to make it brief because I said something in the past. When we, the NNPA, the Black Press of America, decided to come to Fort Lauderdale, we were coming with the understanding that we would come to address some issues and to reestablish relationships that could cause us to move forward in addressing some of those issues. And for a couple of nights, we did we had a town hall at the African American Research Library, and the town hall was the reaffirming of the relationship between Blacks and Jews in America. And we stressed in America so people wouldn't be so alarmed to try to bring in a lot of stuff to try to throw us off our task. And we had some great people here. We had both of our congresswomen, Congresswoman Shepherdess McCormick and Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, as well as one of our renowned professors, and Dr. Marvin Dunn. And then from the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt was supposed to have come, but he got sick. So he said his second person in charge, which was Max Sevilla. And it allowed itself to be engaged in great conversation, great dialogue. Again, this is just the start of us, all of us, trying to build an army, if you will, to address issues that affect us. Hatred has not gone anywhere. It just buried its head just beneath the sand just a little bit. So when that ugly head of racism and homophobia and anti-Semitism and racism, when it comes up, we will have an army of people to try to rid this space of that. So that's what that was about. And then I think one of the highlights for us was the visit to the Holocaust Education and Culture Center, where we listened to two Holocaust survivors. One was a Jewish woman in age, and the other one was a white Jewish woman, and the other was a Black Jewish man. The Black Jewish man, he told us that he did not accept his being a Jew until he was 75 years old. So he went through life suffering the agonies of his identity until he was 75. They also told us of some horrific situations that they found themselves in. Nevertheless, the Black Press of America was here in Broward County to build relationships, reaffirming some, building new ones, to address this political climate of hatred, fascism, and just the disregard for human life if you wasn't blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and white. So I hope I did a synopsis.
Being in attendance. Yeah, being in attendance at some of those events, I think you really surmised it. And I think it's important to say that this is just a start. Again, as you said earlier, this is a national issue. We have to go across this entire United States of America to reestablish these and affirm these type of relationships, especially in the times that we're in today. So if I could, I must give kudos to the African American Research Library and Culture Center and to their staff, Dr. Tamika Hobbs and Morris Beasley, and the director Allison Grubbs, Commissioner Geller, and Mayor Nan Rich, who broke her knee
and she was supposed to bring greetings. But nevertheless, and I must say to Visit Lauderdale, the CEO, Stacy Ritter, for having enough insight and enough guts to stand up and confront some of the things that were happening to try to turn people away from Fort Lauderdale. Thank you. And what's happening next, man?
Well, you know, we got a blast from the past.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Y'all, if y'all were on the show last week and you saw some of the technical difficulties that we had, well, we feel like we've corrected some of that for tonight's show. And I mean, I don't want to really take the lead and steal the thunder because, brother, you and our dear guests have a little more history. So if I could, I'll just set up the segue. How about I tee it up and you take the club and knock it on out.
It's funny you should say that, man. Did y'all hear what happened to the Jackie Robinson statue? That some folk came by and cut the statue down from the feet and took it away. So when you said tee it up, I thought about knocking it out the park. Yeah.
And to that point, just a quick one. The monument on the beach in California of the area that was just repatriated to the family of the Black
Black family.
Yeah, someone stole that marker for the Black Beach this weekend in California as well. So speaking of just defaming black statues.
Wow. Okay. Well, I know one thing you can't defame, and that's our next guest, Mr. Al Calloway. Al goes way back. You know, we had him on last week, but there were some technical difficulties, and we thought we would bring him back this week because he is truly a bit of history as it pertains to the struggle, as it pertains to overcoming, as it pertains to chronologically chronicling our history from a journalistic standpoint. So I won't belabor this. If we can just bring on Mr. Calloway and let's have a conversation with Al.
Hi, gang. I'm here.
You here?
Thank you.
All right.
Welcome back, Mr. Calloway.
Good to be with you.
Thank you. Last week we were talking about your involvement with the Student Nonviolent Coalition Corps, right? Did I say that right? SNCC. You want to give us just a little bit and bring us back up to snuff, and then we're going to jump into some things that you really felt emboldened about to talk about, but we had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, the Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, that started in Tennessee in 1960. I was there. I left Harlem after the summer of 1960. They tried to draft me in the Army, and I skipped out and went to school. I had to go to a junior college because I had been out of school for about 7 years. So I was a 23-year-old freshman. Okay, but I could play ball. I was point guard, and they needed one down there. So I went down to Morristown Junior College in Morristown, Tennessee. So kids in the school lived all over Tennessee and all over Georgia. A lot of people from Atlanta was in the school. Make a long story short, I was in Atlanta a lot, and I was in Nashville a lot, and all over Tennessee. So when they started meeting, John Lewis and others, and some of the Reverends, started talking about the student movement, I was there at some of those meetings, just listening and that kind of thing. And then I began taking information to the other schools when we went on the road. Sometimes we had a 9-day road trip, where we're in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, Savannah State and all those kinds of schools. and I dropped the data on them, you know. So I was like a carrier pigeon, sort of like, you know. But I really got involved over in Atlanta, and so my grades were great, and I was able to talk the people at Clark College to let me in, because I didn't want to stay in junior college another year. Okay, they would allow me to go to Morehouse or Fisk or to Howard University, but I had to finish the sophomore year. I didn't want to stay there for that. My grades were good enough. I was able to transfer to Clark, and when I did, I was already involved in the Committee on Appeal for Human Rights, was the student movement in Atlanta. When when the idea of SNCC came, then the two merged, and Atlanta became the base for SNCC. Okay, and so everything was happening out of Atlanta when I got there in my sophomore year, '61. So that's how I got intimately involved. My role in SNCC, I wasn't in a lot of general meetings and all that. I didn't have a whole lot of exposure with a lot of people, because somehow or another, some of the leaders saw that I had a little gift of organizing and strategy. So I was in on inner strategy meetings with maybe 3-4 people and that kind of thing. And as a result of that, I was given assignments to go where SNCC was going, but be on the outside looking in. So I was able to identify people who were FBI agents because I checked their shoes, and they would have cameras around their necks, but they weren't photographers, you know. But I was dressed like in overalls with a straw hat on, handkerchief hanging out my back pocket, you know, boots on, dusty looking, and that kind of stuff, you know. So I wasn't recognizable to many, I suspect, as really being involved in the student movement. But I was able to take data back, you know, so that we know how to strategize and do better in terms of organizing, in terms of being able to deal with the racist structure.
Al, last week you became emotional when you were telling us about the Clark Panthers and then the Black Panthers. You got kind of got
Yeah,
emotional during that time. Well,
let me tell you about how the Panther Party started. Okay, what I haven't told people about was the relationship between Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, you know, and myself. This began when he was at Bronx High School of Science in New York. He was a student there, but he'd come on 125th Street a lot, as those of us who were trying to be aware, because 125th Street was really a school. You had the street speakers on different corners, all right? And if you listened to the street speakers, you learned a lot of history. And then we had the bookstores, the Mashore bookstore between 125th and 126th Street on 7th Avenue. And down the block, we had the Frederick Douglass Book Center. So that was our school. So we'd be out at night, like on a Friday night, listening to some of the speakers, Carlos Cooks and James Peaker and others, you know, Eddie Porkchop Davis, Arthur Reed, Queen Mother Moore, Dr. Ben Yosef Yachaman, all of these people, you know, and so we learned a lot, you know, and that's how I met Stokely Carmichael. I bought him a book because he didn't have the money. I bought him a book. I think it was the Bandung Conference. Now, the Bandung Conference is a conference that took place, you know, with 81 African and 80 and Asian nations come together to talk about ending their the cloak of colonialism and imperialism on them. So it was a great book. So that's Indian. That's a long story about how Stokely and I came together. So in the summer, now I'm at Clark College in Atlanta, but I come back home to New York in the summer. So I run into Stokely again. And the talk was about a third party movement for Black people was necessary. Because at that time, you remember the Democratic Party was really taken over by the Southern racists. What they call them? I can't think of it right now.
Dixiecrats. The Dixiecrats. Yeah.
So what we saw from this, we had two Black Americas. Now here I am. I went to college because Malcolm X challenged me. I know Malcolm since I was 15, 16 years old. Malcolm challenged me. He said, "Get your mind together, Black man. Your mind belongs to your people." I said, "What?" He challenged me. So I went to night school because I was an art student and a musician. And I was a 16-year-old senior in high school. And when the advisor finally called me in, they told me I needed for my last semester to take some academic courses so I could pass the test for the post office because I'm not college material. What? So I quit school and went to work, man. It was a disaster, So that's how I became a high school dropout. You see? Okay. So now back to the Black Panther Party. So the third party movement was in the air. And I was with Stokely one day, and I thought, I was talking about a third party, man. It should be something stealth. It's got to be quiet. It's got to be cool, like the Panther. At the time I was the editor of the Clark College Panther in the school. See, I was the editor of the school paper. That's why Panther was on my mind, and I just dropped that, and I didn't think no more of it. So when Stokely became the chairman of SNCC, the idea was to go into Lowndes County, Alabama, with the third party movement, and it would be the Panther Party. Well, the brothers on the West Coast got the idea, and everybody was in this leftist thing. I'm from the street. That ain't my thing. I'm not about changing one white man to another. See, that's been my problem. That's been my problem with all the intellectuals talking about socialism and all kinds of other isms. You know what I mean? I'm saying, hey man, I ain't with that. I'm about taking some ideas from everything else and put them together with ideas of Black people, and let's do a Black thing. If it ain't a Black thing, I ain't down. That's me. See what I'm saying? So the idea was going to Lowndes County, Alabama, with this concept. And the boys on the West Coast stole that, and they're Hollywood, So that's how it became the black tams, the sunglasses, the uniforms, all that standing out there, all allows everything opposite what a Panther is what was done, except the programs. The programs that the Black Panther Party did were enormous. They were fantastic. The education programs, the food programs, all of that. The work on the ground of the Panther Party is the reason why law enforcement and government went after them, because they didn't want they didn't want Black people to be successful. They wanted to break up the Black family. What they did with the projects and whatnot, a woman can get into the projects with her children and get some food and free rent, but she can't have a man. Mm-hmm. That's what they did in the 60s to us. So that's what happened with the Black Panther Party. That's what I was kind of excited about. Because I remember those days that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So Mr. Calloway, here we are some years later, where during your time, your period, you had young folk leading leading the charge for freedom, if you will. What do you attribute to perhaps that has fallen off today, or do you see it any different?
Unfortunately, there's this thing about classical conditioning. Now remember, in science, Anton Pavlov uh, uh, wrote the paper in the 1890s, and his paper was codified, as law in 1897 of classical conditioning. That's the experiment he did with the bell, the meat, and the dog.
Mm-hmm.
What he did was he set up a plate, held the dog, rang a bell, waited 1 minute, and let the dog have the meat. He did that 500 times, and then on the 501st time, he put an empty plate down, held the dog, rang the bell, wait a minute, and let the dog have the plate. The dog reacted to the empty plate the same way he reacted to a plate full of meat. So he was classically conditioned. And that's the same thing that perennially they've used on us to get us outside of our mind. The only thing that's wrong with Black people is that we've lost our mind. That's what's happening. And that's one of the reasons why you see how I move. I'm Black and I will always be Black. I have never, white folk have never been able to capture me in any way, form, or fashion. I'll fight them to the last drop. Because I'm a Pan-African Black revolutionary nationalist. I was born that way. I was raised that way. I will die that way.
Yeah.
So about no, wait a minute. Your question about, I'm sorry, brother. Your question about the kids. I think I answered that in my little dialogue. That's the reason why the kids today are not involved. They did that conditioning thing to them. That's all. We got to recondition ourselves to Africanism.
Yeah, and Mr. Calloway, as you were saying that, but I want to go back to a comment you talked about earlier when you talked about your work with SNCC. And as Bobby was saying, well, do you think the young people? I want to expand that to not just the young people and just say our community as a whole. Do you think that we have become so enamored with knowing about the Panthers that we sacrifice knowing what the Panthers did and taking and extracting that part? Because as you talk about getting the data and doing those things, I'm sort of thinking, where do we have that today?
Nowhere. Not nowhere. They were able to separate us so desperately. What they did with Black leadership, a lot of Black leadership in this country, they're doing it. It's a tremendous thing. Give them 30 pieces of silver and you got them. Because what they've done with the banking system and the economy is keep us away from money. And you offer somebody a little drop and you can get them to do what they ordinarily would not do. Be quiet where they wouldn't, where they shouldn't. In the South, a lot of the Black church was not with Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's one of the other things I had.
Right.
I was the only person down in the South who knew both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I mean, on first name basis, because Martin Luther King used to come up to the paper when I was working with the Atlanta Inquirer newspaper in the Calloway building on West 100th Street. That was a Black building owned by Black people. The NAACP was in that building. The Black civil rights lawyers was in that building. And we were there in that building. So it was we were all together. So every time when I got arrested, it was the civil rights lawyers that got me out. I was arrested 5 times. I've been arrested 5 times. I've been indicted twice in 2 different states, and I've yet to commit a crime. Okay. So all in all, I spent a total of 2 days in my life in jail. Okay. The first time I went to jail was 1961 when I came back to Atlanta as a student. There was a brother from I can't mention the name of the country, from an African country. Okay. He was a diplomat. Remember now, I'm 24 years old now as a sophomore. So I'm hanging out. I didn't hanging out with the kids. I'm hanging out with professors and other kind of people because I'm a grown man, married with 2 children. Okay. I sent myself to school. Okay. And so this brother was a diplomat from his country who came to Atlanta to study international banking and finance and international trade, right? But segregation was on, so he couldn't stay on campus at Emory University, okay? So he had to stay in Bumstead Hall in Atlanta University. And he was able to do that because the dean of the School of Social Work at Atlanta University was the then president of the Urban League. What's the name of that brother? Who incidentally drowned in Ghana, in Accra, while he was in the water with Percy Sutton and
it was before Vernon Jordan. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
No, not Vernon Jordan. No,
yeah, he was before Vernon. Yeah.
Yeah. The brother who was a homosexual but brilliant. What's his name? Who helped put together the March on Washington thing?
Bayard Ruskin.
Bayard.
Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin and Percy Sutton and this brother, can't remember his name right now. We're in the water together. The water's up to just above the waistline, and all of a sudden this brother disappeared. Now how that happened? Well, he was hooked up with the Vanderbilts and one of the women and all that. Anyway, they got rid of him. That's another one of the mysteries. They just can pick you off, man. They pick you off. They just pick you off, man.
Yeah.
You see? And there's all kinds of ways of separating black people. I came out the subway just as they shot Malcolm X. I was coming to the meeting just as they shot Malcolm X. And I'm still asking the question, hey, if everybody's got to be patted down and searched, women's pocketbooks have to be searched in order to get into a meeting, how is it that these brothers got into a meeting with shotguns and pistols and shot Malcolm X to this very day? How did that happen? No answers. No answers in the black community. No investigation by nobody. Just died. As a journalist, every time I'm asking questions, and all I'm getting in the stares in Harlem. People just stare at me and say, "I don't know what happened." So we don't have the leadership we should have to advance a movement for our people. We don't have it.
So, Brother Calloway, a question came up about this separatism, and I call it this post-integration syndrome. Can you speak to that to a point where do you feel that had a large part play in our separatism? And then part 2 to that question is, how do we unconditionalize oneself?
2 difficult questions, brother. Because I personally don't know the answer. All I do is just keep working, because I just don't believe that we will be able to come out of this situation in my children's generation. I just don't see it. And when I say my children's generation, my children are older than y'all. I got a son getting ready to be 67 and a daughter 68 years old. very educated, but that whole generation, they're very educated, but nothing. They became meites. Let me get mine. Let me get mine. Let me get. Yo, what? Where you going? Same thing in Africa. Everybody went for independence. Independence is nothing but a word. Independence, you don't need independence, you need liberation. Because they're independent and they still belong to England and France and Amsterdam and the United States and all of that. You know what I mean? All these governments. And as soon as a brother or sister raise her head in Africa, they get assassinated. 20 some odd leaders in Africa have been assassinated in the last several years who tried to rise up and put their economy together, get their own money together and whatnot. No, got rid of them. So that's a worldwide thing, brothers. That's a worldwide thing. You just have to be careful and build. Now, what I did, I thought I might be able to do something. So I created journalism workshops in Harlem, 4 different ones in a decade. So I've got people out there who are trained. I don't know what they're doing right now, but I know what they know. I know what they know. All of them can put a paper together by themselves because I taught them what I learned at the Atlanta Inquirer. That's the one thing you can learn in a black newspaper. You learn every skill, everything. I learned everything up to even opaque and stripping the negative, all the way to that point. Every job, and that's what I taught. Every job, okay. So that wherever they were in the world, they can put together any kind of publication they want, newsletter, whatever, anything. That's just something to. And everybody who's got a skill need to do things like that. You know what I mean? Just not like that, but just do something in your community. Stay community focused. Don't let white people take you out of your community. I lamented about the W. Du Bois disaster. W. Du Bois, who was an intellectual, half white and all that, Harvard and so forth. So he advanced. He was against Garvey and Booker T. Washington. He was against them, and they're doing economic development. He's being an intellectual, learning Greek and all that kind of stuff. And hey, these brothers are learning and doing what? How to build.
Yeah.
How to build. Booker T. Washington taught people how to build houses. How to make bricks out of mud. How to make shoe laths so that you can make your own shoes. Teaching people to make dresses and suits and tailors and all that, to make what? Food, clothing, and shelter, and a surplus. That's what they was doing. That's why he brought George Washington Carver on. Showed him how to farm properly and so you can take care of yourself. And then we went away from that because everybody hooked up with Du Bois. And Du Bois said, no, we need the talented 10th. We're going to educate the talented 10th, and then they are going to be the leaders. And what did the Negroes do? As soon as they got a degree or something like that, they cut out. They want to be with the white folks. Boulets.
Well, that's where Carter G. Woodson came in with the miseducation of a Negro. But now there was a quote, and I can't say it verbatim what Du Bois said, but when he talked about fighting, you may be outnumbered, but you better come out to fight with your knees scarred up. That's one thing that I can say about him. I wasn't with the talented 10th, but the fact that we have people in political positions who are maybe outnumbered by the Republican Party, and we can talk about the Florida legislation, and you have Negroes complaining. No, man, no, you got to come out with some blood on your knees. But I want to back up a little bit, Brother Calloway. So in the struggle, where were the different people? People like the Jews. Where were they in the struggle that you remember?
Yeah. Okay, here they were. Deacons for Defense. Negroes with guns with Brother Williams in North Carolina. You know, you see different things like that. What Elijah Muhammad was teaching, he was trying to teach that, and that went awry some kind of way. It always goes awry because white folks will always find a way to divide something.
COINTELPRO, Hooger with COINTELPRO infiltrating and all that.
That's right.
Yes, Well, what do you offer us, Mr. Calloway, in terms of hope?
Future. Keep it moving. Don't give up. I'm 86. I'm still in it. I'm ready. You know, stay physically in tune, mentally in tune, and spiritually in tune. I'm ready.
Amen.
If something happens right now, I'm ready. Stay ready. You know, that's what it's about. The future. Don't let the kids hang out on the corner, especially the boys, holding their thing up, whistling at the girls. And the girls got an arm full of books. We should be at every college in the world studying everything. But we're not. The boys are on the streets. Want to sell some crack or something like that. You know what I mean? Just out of their minds. Don't believe they can make it. We got to keep at it. We got to keep doing positive things. Be a positive model. It ain't gonna happen, brothers, in a day or a week or a year, maybe not even in a generation. Keep it moving. Keep positivism moving. You got to get more positivism out there to override that negativism that's out there. That's it. Straight and simple.
Yeah, and if I can gather anything that you said from that is, I heard someone say the other day, and you just said that in your own way. We've moved from a people who want to believe to a people who want to know. We're in this age of knowing, but not an age of believing. So I thank you for that. Yeah, because that's exactly where we are.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's
that's it.
When I think about Mr. Calloway, where you have been and where you have come from, people like Fred Shuttlesworth and Andrew Young, and yeah. You know,
Your name of my name.
What was that? Well, you already told us. It was. What was that like for you, Mr. Calloway, to be around those individuals?
Inspiring, man. Inspiring, and deflating when I got back to Harlem, and the guys are still on the corners, you know, debating, and saying terrible things about what's happening down in the South, and I'm down there in it. I'm from Harlem like they are, but I'm down there in it. I know what's happening in Georgia. I know what's happening in Florida, man. I came down to St. Augustine, Florida, with Martin Luther King and them, man. You know, I was everywhere, man. At one place, hey, my roommate was from Kosciuszko, Mississippi. My other roommate, was with Martin Luther King. You know, because in SNCC we were with all organizations. See, we were a committee, and our objective was to be with everything. Guys with the NAACP, the Back to Africa, whatever it was, Deacons of Defense, whatever. We were everywhere because we were not to be a permanent organization. We were a committee. Our objective was to meld into the diaspora. That was our conviction.
And you spoke about last week about Bob Moses, and I don't know if we have enough time for you to just share his influence on how that was organized.
Well, the man's from Harlem, you know, we know about him, you know, he's a great guy, you know. I was in theater also, and when he was putting together the Mississippi summer program, he asked me to come, but I had 2 children. I had to go to work, and because when school, as soon as school turned out, as soon as I finished my final exams, I didn't even wait for a grade. I was gone because I'd get back to New York before all the students get there, get a job. So my objective was when I got off the train in New York, I got a locker and put my luggage in, and I went job hunting. When the train got to Pennsylvania, I went in the bathroom and changed into my suit and tie. Washed up and got on my dark suit with tie, my shine shoes and stuff, man. And I put those bags in the locker, man. And I went to the employment offices right away, man. I did not. When I came home, I had a job. You see, because that's what you got to do. You got a family. You got family with sacrificing, so I can get an education. I did all right. I made the dean's list.
Mr. Calloway, for us who have had the opportunity to not only read about history, but actually put our hands, on you and others who have made history. Now we have a governor, a fascist governor, that says we can't even teach history. So how do we put that history for these young folks to witness, to be a part of?
Well, my belief is, and it may be erroneous because I see what the problem could be with it, because I'm looking at the Black church. The Black church, it's always been my belief. I've had arguments with preachers and whatnot. I went to seminary for a little while until they kicked me out because they said I was anti-cleric. I was anti-cleric because the papers I wrote, they didn't like me. But the church should be the place where Black history is taught. But they got to watch out, because the system is going to come and say, well, we'll take your 501c3, we'll take your tax exempt status away from you because you're doing something that the government doesn't want you to do. The biggest problem with Black people perennially, since we first came here as kidnapped people, is the government. The United States government has always been the enemy of Black people. What did I do? I moved the camera or something?
Yeah, you moved your camera. But we can hear you. While he's adjusting his camera.
Oh, my camera.
See
Yeah. My
Ms.
camera.
Lumpkins, Ms. Dillard, Ms. Henry,
I got
Mr. Boyd, Ms. Hood, and all of our viewers. We certainly thank you all for joining in this conversation. So.
And why Al is making that adjustment, name.
Can y'all give me a minute? Somebody's at my.
Yeah, I will give you a minute. A name comes to mind, and when we talk about young folks and where are we in this movement, Al mentioned that so many those that step up and step out are assassinated internationally, as well as right here in these United States. And one rapper comes to mind that was doing remarkable things, outstanding things in the California area. Brother by the name of Nipsey Hussle. And land ownership, speaking truth, just being so proactive and positive, as Al has said. Some of the things we have to do, but we can't be deterred by that, because if that's who we are, that's who we continuously have to stand up and be. But I can't wait to just hear our brother before we close out tonight, to just kind of give his final words and final opinions on his life as he's shared tonight, the things he's experienced and the hope he has for the future, including the Black church. And we are fortunate enough to have those in the Black church that understand this, and I believe are working toward dignifying Black history, dignifying our unity, us as a people to continue to persevere. I mean, what haven't we done?
Yeah, and Mr. Calloway hit on a great thing. Yeah, we should be able to get our history from our houses of worship, get the truth, and not some watered down version. That's one thing. The other thing is, we if we know, then we teach it. We don't keep it. We don't pass on lies. We tell the truth, no matter what it is. And we said in some programs before, if you're not willing to die, then you're really not willing to live. And sometimes it gets to that. We also said you got to know who you're in the foxhole with. Mm-hmm. Now, everybody's skin color ain't necessarily kin. So we have to find those who have the same beliefs and ideas to what it means to be free. So it's going to take some adjustment, man. But the adjustment has to be with open minds, and open hearts. Yeah. We can't do business as usual. That will not work, and it's evident right now that it's not working. Mm-hmm. Did we get Mr. Calloway back?
I think he's ready. We can bring Mr. Calloway back on.
Okay.
Bobby, what you just said is man, that's the perfect sentence, man. You just can't do what we've been doing. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. We got to do better.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I do want to look at this last comment from Miss Betty Lumpkins here, who says, if we don't get our history out of our homes and Black churches, we're lost. And truly,
amen.
This whole education process starts at home and in our sacred institution.
Wait, the last person, is that who I think it is? Is that Mayor Joy Cooper? Let's bring her comment on. Thank you, Joy. Thank you for joining us. It's critical to preserve the truth, and you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. That is of the utmost importance. Mm-hmm. And Mayor, while you're here, we got to get you on so we can have that conversation.
See what they did to us. I mean, yes, sir.
I just want to say in closing, can you kind of give us your part of remarks? We are already over the hour, but this is just so vital. This is just such great information that we kind of want to go ahead and let you summarize this show and with your closing remarks.
Well, we got to go back to Kemet. We see the Greeks in the New Kingdom. The Greeks took over. You see, they finally defeated Kemet, and they renamed it Africa. You see, we got to go back to our. I mean, they renamed it Egypt. I'm sorry, they renamed it Egypt, but they also named our continent Africa, and the name that we had for the original name is Akibulan. And South Africa is Monowatapa, and then they divided it like Swiss cheese. So we got like 52 to 54 nations, so-called nations, that white people control all of them on the continent. And so divide and conquer works. And we got to come together. Jamaica's got to come together with Black people from the South. Black people from the South got to come together with Black people from the North and all of that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? And the Barbadians can no longer be standoffish, really, really British. They're not British. You know what I mean? And the people in St. Lucia, don't know what's going on, basically. And the people in Trinidad, they South Americans. What do you mean you South Americans? You Africans. We're all Black. We all came from one place. Like you said before, all the stuff that's going on in what, Somali right now? You know what Somali was? Somali was
Mhm.
And kings from that area sat on the throne in what white people call Egypt. Our history is our future and our past.
Hmm.
And the kids don't know it, and it will always be lost, no matter what you do, because they will be what? Classically conditioned. My opening remarks.
Right.
Thank you, brothers.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Al.
Okay.
Dear brother.
Yeah. Well, since this is the first day to celebrate in the month of Black History, on February the 1st in 1865, the same day Congress approved the 13th Amendment ending slavery, Charles Sumner introduced a motion that made Boston's attorney, John Rock, the first Black attorney to be admitted to argue in the Supreme Court of the United States. John Rock was credited with coining the phrase, "Black is beautiful." And this was back in 1865. Now, again on February the 1st, a great poet was born, Langston Hughes. He was born in Joplin, Missouri. Hughes was an American poet, a novelist, and please, one of the best poets, romantic poets that I can remember. His work was known, Brother Calloway, during the Harlem Renaissance. As a matter of fact, one of his famous quotes was, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is like a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." But what I remember most about my fraternity brother Langston Hughes, was the poem called Harlem by Langston Hughes. It asks one of the most pivotal questions of all times. And it was called Harlem. It was meant for any place that Black people were. And that question he asked was, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust over and served like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. And please don't allow your dreams to be deferred. Do something with them. Thank you, Mr. Calloway. God bless you all, and join us again.
Thank you, brothers.
Good night.
Good night.